All right, welcome back to another episode of In the Pocket Football Podcast. I am your host, SOU to the P. Here with my big brother, Mike. What's going on, bro?
What's going on, family? Good to see you. Another good week of football for the most part.
Yeah, some better than others, but in life there's winners and then there's losers, and it feels good to be on the winning side this week.
I can't relate this week.
I know. They robbed y'all.
Sure did.
But I guess where I wanted to start the show off is kind of where the night ended, right? Because there's a tale of two different games. Because on the last show we didn't get to cover the Monday night game, but it's only fitting that the Monday night game kind of translates into the Sunday night game, right? A tale of two different performances. So let's talk really briefly about the Monday night game, right? Chicago Bears versus the Minnesota Vikings. And Bears looked dominant early. And J.J. McCarthy looked like a quarterback that was just way over his skis. And then something clicked in the fourth quarter, and he blacked out apparently, and just played he played his ass off, honestly. And he looked for a moment like he could be a franchise quarterback. And we don't know what happened to the defense in Chicago, because it ain't like they don't have players in Chicago. Caleb Williams looked good for most of the game, but then just could not respond to Brian Flores' defensive adjustments that they made after the half. Again, we'll talk about the Sunday night game, but just talking about the Monday night game, if you were a Vikings fan, maybe you had a little hope leaving that game.
Yeah, absolutely. J.J. McCarthy started off slow. We got to keep in mind that was his first career start in the NFL. He lost his rookie year due to a knee injury. But Kevin O'Connell being confident enough to let Sam Darnold go, to let him come in, lets you know that they believed in what they were seeing, that he was picking it up. But preseason games, joint practices aren't the same as a regular season game. So I think he started off understandably a little bit rusty. He started off rusty. And Caleb Williams looked good coming out the gate. He only had one touchdown, but he was efficient for the most part. J.J. McCarthy started off early, getting sacked a few times, and then he realized, I got Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson didn't have his biggest game, but he came up with crucial catches, a crucial touchdown, 4 catches, 44 yards, a touchdown. And they closed out that well. So I thought they were building good momentum. And also on the other side of it, Chicago in the last 3 seasons has had these games where they were up and lost because of a miscue or bad call or a bad play by their defense. Tyreek Stevenson, I believe it was last year, that Hail Mary.
Mm-hmm.
This game was the same way. So hopefully they can get that corrected, because they do have some guys over there.
Well, let's fast forward it right to Sunday Night Football, where it's the Minnesota Vikings again, but this time against the Atlanta Falcons in Minnesota. And J.J. McCarthy, again, off to another slow start, but he never seemed to find his rhythm as the Atlanta Falcons defense continued to hunt him all night. I think he was sacked, we want to say 6 times last night.
6 times, yep.
Yeah, so Atlanta defense, to their credit, they were hunting. The Minnesota defense just couldn't keep up. They got tired because they got no reprieve, and J.J. McCarthy did not look better as the game went on. He the more hits that he took, the worse that he started to look. And like I've been trying to tell people for so long now, I am not a J.J. McCarthy fan. I'm a Michigan fan, and even when he was at Michigan, I was fed up with his play at Michigan, and he needs a lot of things around him. And when you have Justin Jefferson, who is still one of the top receivers in the league, but he's still kind of playing off of that soft tissue injury. You don't have Jordan Addison because of the suspension. And then you end up losing Aaron Jones in that game last night as well. You're relying on a roster that isn't really deep when it comes to talent for weapons. And Atlanta, don't get me wrong, Atlanta didn't look that much better than Minnesota, but Michael Penix as a quarterback looked much more comfortable in that setting than J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, and really the big difference in the game was obviously, Atlanta scored 1 touchdown and had 5 field goals, right? Mm-hmm. And then Minnesota had the two field goals. That was the difference. They couldn't get on the board. Minnesota capitalized with those field goals. Again, they had, if they didn't score a touchdown, they would have beat them 15-6. But it was a field goal heavy game, and Michael Penix did look more efficient in the offense. But I do want to give a shout out to both defenses, especially Atlanta, right? Atlanta was
Yeah, they
hunting
were
the whole
balling.
time. Their run defense was phenomenal, so they forced JJ McCarthy to have to pass. And then their pass rushers, were pinning their ears back, obviously, with 6 sacks. Michael Penix got sacked 3 times, so the Vikings defense was playing relatively well. The big difference is Bajan had 143 yards on the ground. He didn't have a scoring touchdown on the ground. Tyler Algier did, punched it in, but they gave him 218 yards rushing compared to only giving up 78, right? The Falcons gave up 78 yards rushing and had 3 times more than that. It's hard to win any games when you're letting a team run wild on you like that. And I think if I was a Vikings fan, I would say like, hey, your defense looks like they're rounding into form. Really, the month of September, teams are, especially teams that didn't play in the preseason, are really rounding out the form, getting some players back, etc. And I think they're all going to be on that track now. The downside of that is losing Aaron Jones. They already rolled him out this week against the Bengals, which obviously we'll touch on the injuries they have there as well. But it's going to be difficult when they haven't been able to get the running game going this year to lose your top back. I'm curious to see how they're going to step up and replace that production and what they're going to do to actually get their run game going, because that's been a little bit of an issue for them to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, another thing, the Vikings don't escape this one without injuries. Like we touched on Aaron Jones, but a report is just now coming out that there's a high probability that JJ McCarthy is now going to miss some time due to an ankle sprain. So enter Carson Wentz with the Minnesota Vikings. And listen, we don't know what version of Carson Wentz that we're going to get.
We do.
My thing is this, like, here's the thing that I know about Carson Wentz that I very much feel passionately about. Like, if you give him the ball and you put him with a Kevin O'Connell, I feel much more confident in his ability to throw the ball downfield than I do JJ McCarthy. That's just the way it. Now, he doesn't have the mobility of a JJ McCarthy, and he's much more brittle than a JJ McCarthy. Well, at least we don't know. JJ McCarthy hasn't played enough NFL football to say whether he's brittle or not, but his career has not been off to a fantastic start where you miss your entire first season due to an injury, and now it looks like he's going to end up missing some time due to another injury. So who knows? We might be able to put Joe Burrow tag on him.
Yeah, and I think if you notice these injuries, it's teams that haven't fully addressed their line or having problems on the line. Like, obviously, Christian Darrisaw is still out for the Vikings, I believe. So your left tackle that you paid all that money to, they haven't really been able to address one of those guard spots. They had Dalton Reisner there for a while, and that spot's been – so they've been making moves to add to their offensive line. They just haven't been settled there, and as a result of that, running back, quarterback get hurt. And the same thing going to the Bengals, Joe Burrow. One of the things when you pay a Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and a Jamar Chase is you're going to lose some pieces, right? And the places that they've been sacrificing their offensive defensive lines. And really, you cannot build a team from the ground up without having good offensive and defensive lines. If you have all the skilled players in the world, we saw this with CU, but your lines aren't really able to compete, it puts that quarterback on a timer, and they set themselves up in that situation for potential injury. So again, shout out to the Bengals for getting that win against the Jags yesterday with the backup quarterback. Mm-hmm. But obviously having your starting quarterback out for 3 months, that had to get surgery because of a turf toe, which is essentially like a hyperextended toe, and this depends on the damage. Sometimes a break comes along with that, whatever. Him being out for 3 months is going to put them in a position where I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs before. Right? I thought they'd be competing, but I didn't think they'd make the playoffs. But there's no way possible they're going to make the playoffs at this point with that line and the backup quarterback. They're going to have to add another quarterback, and they're going to have to do something to reinforce that line. So, best wishes to all the Bengals fans.
Yeah, man. Listen, unless Jake Browning has a Brock Purdy type arc for the rest of the season, I just don't. I don't see a way where they get out of that division as competitive as it's going to be. I wanted to stay on our theme. We'll stay to Sunday. We're going to stay on Sunday's games, and we'll end it with the Thursday night matchup because I wanted to talk about the Thursday night matchup because I wanted to give respect to those two teams. But I do want to circle back to, the parallels that we saw from last Monday night's game to some of the action that we saw on Sunday. Let's talk about the Bears again, but this time Ben Johnson returns back to Ford Field against the Detroit Lions, and it was not a warm and fuzzy welcome for Ben Johnson. There was a lot of vitriol being spewed his way. Chants of F Ben Johnson in the stands, filling the stadium as the Detroit Lions found their identity from last year. If maybe only for a game, we don't know, because they've looked like two completely different teams in 2 different weeks. One team looked completely lost, and this other one looked like the Lions that we've been more accustomed to seeing over the last few years. But they dropped a 50 burger on Ben Johnson as just to say, hey, F you, you messed up going in division.
Yeah, absolutely. And a shout out to Amon-Ra St. Brown, because 3 touchdown game, over 130 yards. He had a phenomenal day. Helped me pull out a victory in my fantasy football league because of that man single-handedly. But saying that to say, the Bears started off fast. It was down 14-0. I looked up, it was 14-0 like that. And I was like, uh-oh, are the Lions not, they got it figured out. But then it was like they gave them spotted them some points because they knew what was coming. They put belt to ass. It's really the only way to describe it.
That's the only way.
They dominated every facet of the game. Their defense kind of clicked, and at that point they only gave up 1 more touchdown. So literally they went on a 52-7 run the rest of that game after being down 14-0. And that was nothing but dominant. The Bears were struggling a little bit. DeAndre Swift has been making some plays. Their line hasn't really played together. They didn't play a lot together in the preseason. They added like 3 new pieces to their line. So I think as they're able to get that continuity together, as well as, like you mentioned this previously, but I'm not exactly sure what's going on with their defense because they have players. They have pieces at linebacker. They have pieces in their secondary. So I don't know if it's just a lot of adjustments, having to run a new scheme again 2 years in a row, whatever the case may be. But the Lions looked like they returned back to form. And if they can keep that up, especially with, injuries, like the Vikings are dealing with some injuries, obviously now, et cetera, that the Lions could get themselves in a position to try to compete with the Packers in a little bit of a better place.
Yeah. Again, the Bears, in addition to absolutely being mauled, they end up losing Jalen Johnson. It's looking like he might miss some extended time. They might need to go do some surgery for this lingering groin injury. But there's nothing definitive on that right now. So I guess we'll see what happens there. But Mike, let me ask you this, because again, we're 2 weeks in, but I'm kind of the mindset right now where, and I don't want to stick a fork in the Bears because I think, right, it's a young season. We've got time to get this thing turned around, but it just feels like the more things change, the more they stay the same, where this is a Chicago team that has historically got out to really good starts and then just for whatever, right, the second half of games is falling apart. Like, they did not look prepared to play yesterday. That, like, it looked like a complete failure from the top down on that organization. Like, Ben Johnson didn't have that team ready to play. Caleb did not look like an NFL quarterback. Like, no part of that team looked right.
Yeah, I disagree slightly. I'm more of the opinion, like, for coaches, it takes a little bit of time to get their culture implemented, especially coming to a team. The reality is, if you're firing a coach, hiring a new head coach, for the most part, you didn't have a previous good head coach. You had some probably personnel issues, right, that got the previous coach, maybe GM, fired. So, like, I feel like this is going to put them in a situation where he's setting the culture. We are seeing some progress out of Caleb Williams over last year, consistently, right? He's not having as many turnovers as he had last year, as an example, early on. So even if it's that and they can build from there and get their running game going, which obviously we know they want to do. So again, as a Bears fan, I know it's hard to hold out optimism forever, but you guys do have one of the best quarters in the game. While he is injured, he'll be back. It didn't seem like it was going to be like a season-ending injury from what they were reporting. He might be out for some weeks or even a month, but he'll be back. Their defense will kind of round back into form. And if Caleb Williams can keep building these building blocks, because having a Ben Johnson as a rookie year would have been monumental for his career. Now he's getting him in his second year, so he's having to go over and redo some different things. So I think they'll be fine. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time to get that culture implemented, and I don't see that team being as good as maybe me and you predicted them to be, and a few other people like are really, really believers for them. But until they get that culture fully implemented, until they have the pieces that they need, the biggest thing I would think is if it's more the more you change, the more things change, the more things stay the same, is if they fired their GM, right? Because it's been a cycle for them where they draft a quarterback with the GM, with the coach that's already there, and they fire the coach, and then the new coach comes in, the GM gets fired a year later, and they're in this repetitive cycle. So as long as they keep that GM coach quarterback combination together for long enough for them to grow, I think that could be a good thing. But if they start having turnover in the front office, then that's going to set them up for another decade of mediocrity.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man, we'll see what happens. I think Caleb Williams is going to be one of the more interesting stories to monitor in the NFL, not just for this year, but just going forward. There's something like I think the talent is undeniable, but when I watched all like the fluff pieces and everything that they did going into this week, um, I cannot help but be concerned about Caleb Williams from the perspective of I want my quarterback I want to get the sense from my quarterback that football is the most important thing to them. And I don't feel that from Caleb Williams. Like it seems like it's just another thing to do. And we all know, right? Football isn't the end all be all of anything. These people have like they're real human beings, right? They have real lives and they have things that go on outside of it. But like as a fan, I want to feel like you're living and breathing this stuff. And I don't know, man. It just comes off as like every time he makes a comment or he talks about things that's football related, even when he's quote unquote taking accountability for his performance and stuff on the field, like it doesn't feel sincere to me. It feels very like, half-hearted. Like he's just like, yeah, whatever, it's okay.
Yeah, and again, I can't speak to the work he puts in. Obviously, I'm not there,
Sure.
and I do understand what you're saying. It can come off that way, but I think this is going to be the first time in his pro career that he's had a very competent offensive coordinator / head coach, because Eberflus is doing some very unquestionable things, very questionable things rather. As the head coach, they didn't have an offensive system. They weren't really showing them how to study, et cetera. If all the reporting was accurate, which I think it would be true because there's multiple reports on that. So saying that to say, man, again, it does suck to understand that, yeah, you got to build a foundation. But think about if the Bears have a Lions type rebuild, right? Like the Lions were dead to rights for a long time. The ownership stuck it out with the GM, their head coach, and they got to a point where they were 15-2 last year, I believe, or 14-3, and now they're perennial playoff contenders, right? And if they reset with the after losing both their coordinators, and really not just losing two coordinators, they lost eight coaches, right?
Yep.
Lost to two, and then they lost another three on each side. So they lost a lot of people. So, but at the end of the day, they still have Dan Campbell, which is why I believe in the Lions, right? They have that foundation built. Ben Johnson, by all accounts, has a very good leadership style. He holds players accountable. So again, I think over a bit of time they will, because we're already seeing good things from Caleb Williams. Like the jump from Caleb Williams last year to now is night and day. I felt like he had a few games that was inconsistent, that he had some great games, but if this is like his floor, is how he's been playing now, and he can kind of hit the ceiling people are expecting him to, I think they'll be in good shape. And Roma Dunze absolutely balled out yesterday too, right?
He sure
so
did.
You see your young receiver with your young quarterback making plays together. Cole Kmet is a steady chain mover, et cetera. Loveland, they haven't really worked in the way that I think they want to yet, but I think when all these pieces start to come together, they'll be in better shape.
Sure. Well, let's spin it to another game it didn't really have any defense, but let me tell you, it was exciting to watch all the way down to the last seconds of overtime. The New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys, man, thoroughly entertaining game.
Absolutely.
Where they just traded blows back and forth, and it was really a comedy of errors for who was going to make the last mistake. And unfortunately for the Giants, it was Russell Wilson testing, doing a heat check on that Dallas Cowboy defense late into OT period, where he thought he might be able to sneak something over the top and ends up getting it picked. And they ultimately are able to drive down and run the clock with down to 4 seconds to kick the field goal and get out of there with the win. But I thought pretty excellent showing for both teams offensively. Both teams made plenty of mistakes. The defenses, both sides, were absolutely gassed. I thought that the line for the Cowboys actually held up well against a very aggressive defensive front from the Giants. And then there were moments where Russell looked like, he looked like Russ from the most dominant Seahawks days, and then there's days where he looked like Russ from early days in Denver.
Right. No, I agree, and I think the difference of that game, and I feel like we're beating the same drum a lot of times with some of this stuff, but like winning leads success, right? Like success leaves clues rather, and having 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have that sack late, but the big difference is they only had 84 yards rushing, right? You can't really impose what you want to on a team. Sacks are inevitable if you're dropping back 41 times in the game. It's going to be very difficult no matter how good your offensive line is. And their line does look much improved pass blocking wise year over year. But Dak Prescott dropping back 52 times as well. That's not good, obviously. But the flip side is, Javonte Williams is starting to look like Javonte Williams' rookie year before the injury. So him, obviously, I'm a Javonte Williams fan. Him as a former Bronco, him was our first-round draft pick, and I didn't want us to let go of him this quick. I understood why they did, why Sean Payton did, but that change of scenery seems to be good. But it looks like they got their bell cow back, and they only got him for $3 million, right? He got almost 100 yards, 18 carries, a touchdown, and their team went over 135 yards in the game. CeeDee Lamb was absolutely looking more like CD, that 11 targets. He had 9 catches. So I do believe they're starting to round that out. And again, this goes back to a lot of people saying Shadi is he's a coach that is an underrated coach. He didn't really have his opportunity. He seems to be showing that, but they're going to absolutely have to figure out defensively the secondary piece, like what's going on in their secondary. They just dropped a big bag on Darren Bland. They're going to have to pay what's his name?
Trayvon Diggs.
Trayvon Diggs. They're going to have to pay him as well. They just added Jadeveon Clowney, which I think will be good. I don't know how much that's going to help. He hasn't been a prolific pass rusher like he was maybe in college, but he's a phenomenal run defender. He's a good he's really good at helping contain the pocket, but they're going to have to figure out kind of that back end for them. And the Giants defense is a little bit younger as well in some spots. So I think their pass rush coming together a little bit more will be good. But it was absolutely explosive game, obviously 77 points in the game. Those just going back and forth. That was one of the more entertaining games of the weekend, aside from, another, but that was a very entertaining game. And if I was a Giants fan, I would say, hey, we got something to look up forward to. Hopefully I can get the running game going. And if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm over the moon with how they played the Eagles last week and how they played the Giants yesterday. And they look like they could be competing potentially for a playoff spot, especially with teams like the Vikings having some injuries, et cetera, right? Somebody has to take that spot if they're not there.
For sure. Well, you said you had another game that was pretty competitive. What's a game that kind of stood out to you yesterday?
One of the ones, and I'm pulling it up. I had it all up, and then I was trying to pull up the box score. Was another one, Bengals and Jags, which really touched on, but the Patriots and the Dolphins. Like sure. that game, that wasn't a game that I was thinking, all right, this is going to be a fantastic game. I thought it was going to be a lower scoring game, et cetera. 60 points split up between those two teams, 122 yards on the ground by the Patriots. And they did pull away 2 touchdowns. Tua looked way better, 315 yards, 2 touchdowns yesterday. But the thing that absolutely stifled the Dolphins later on is not being able to establish the run, right? Mike McDaniels, that Shanahan tree, is known for being able to run the ball. And previously, they dropped 70 points in the Broncos a couple years ago, and they started that by running the ball. They only had 61 yards rushing yesterday, right? Their offense couldn't keep that going. Tyreek Hill did. There's been a lot said, like Tyreek Hill, hasn't had a play over 30 yards in over a year, blah, blah, blah. Yesterday, he had 47 yards, a 47-yard reception, so he got out of that. Devin Achane is absolutely balling, though. He had 92 yards receiving, another 30 on the ground, so he's been an efficient playmaker for them as well. And they got Jaden Waddle involved, but their offensive line has been something we've been talking about for years. And I really do believe if they had their offensive line situated, they would have been in a position to compete that full game. But they were only up by 6 points, right? They only won by 6 points or lost by 6 points. And I think a big difference for that was their line, right? Their line wasn't able to hold up against the Patriots, right? They didn't. Tua did get sacked 5 times, but their defense just wasn't able to make plays, maybe the way a lot of us were anticipating that. And then another game I did want to touch on, another big game I wanted to touch on was the Seahawks and the Steelers, right? That Seahawks and the Steelers game. Sam Darnold had 2 interceptions that game. but he also had 2 touchdowns. Their defense is making timely plays with McDonald. Like, that's something that they have been able to do. They got Kobe Bryant got an interception, as well as Darion Kendrick. And the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers had a 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, which he's had seasons with like 4 or 5 picks. And for him to have 2 interceptions yesterday, the Steelers weren't able to establish the run game. But if I was a Steelers fan, the thing I would be questioning is like, hey, what's going on with our defense, right? Like, they have historically had a great defense. The last 2 weeks, you saw the point that their defense is giving up 31 points yesterday, and then the week prior they gave up to the Jets. They gave up 32 points, right? So their defense has to round into form a little bit more for them to get back to that Steelers football. But what were your thoughts on maybe that Seattle-Pittsburgh game? Like, did you observe the same things I did, a little bit different, or what would you say?
Yeah, I thought that the Pittsburgh defense was going to tee off on Seattle, to be honest
100%.
with you. I really thought that they were going to find a way to get to Sam Darnold and rattle him, and you just didn't see that. Like, kudos to the Seahawks offensive line. They kept Darnold upright for most of the day, kept him pretty protected, pretty comfortable, so he could sit in the pocket and make those throws. There were moments where Aaron Rodgers looked like Aaron Rodgers. DK Metcalf did his thing as well. I think the thing that surprised me the most with this game is how conservative the play calling was for Pittsburgh.
Right.
And that was a comment that I noticed across social media from a lot of Pittsburgh fans, is that like they were really irritated at what seemed to be a very, very conservative game plan for Pittsburgh, where they just didn't go after it. And you have all the tools to get after this Seahawks team, which is probably going to end up being better than a lot of people thought it was going to be. But they have a lot of weaknesses and stuff, especially along that offensive line, that you could have exploited with the pass rushers that you have on your team. And it just didn't seem like that ever got going. And they didn't really want to test that secondary that was missing Devin Witherspoon, who arguably is their best corner out there.
Right.
I would have loved to see them test more of that stuff downfield. They just didn't take any advantage of that. And here's one thing I will say, and I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's a phenomenal coach. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day for coaching, and you can't convince me otherwise. But I am also of the mindset too that as much as I love Mike Tomlin for all the great things that he's done in the Steelers, I still think that, and don't ask me who you would get, I still think that maybe a new voice is needed in Pittsburgh. Not that Mike Tomlin isn't doing a phenomenal job, but I think both sides, right? I think both the coach and I think the players have just grown to this level of comfort with one another, and they're just used to doing what feels like a really abusive pattern. There was something that happened on Sunday in that game that I thought is absolutely inexcusable, and it's 100% on coaching. It's the kickoff that resulted in the touchdown for Seattle, where Caleb Johnson lets it fly over his head, does not understand the new kicking rules, as that ball remains live in the end zone, and they allow Seattle to go down and recover it for the touchdown. That is 100% on coaching. Like, you have to make sure your players know the rules of the game that they are playing. And I get that Caleb Johnson is a rookie, and it's a lot of information to take in. You cannot have him on special teams if he doesn't understand the rules for the new kickoff procedure. That's on coaching. That's on your special teams coach. That's on your head coach. That's on somebody. It's inexcusable. You gave up 7 free points to dish. It didn't help. It didn't help the situation at all, because it's a very, very quick turnaround. And when you thought, hey, we're going to get a possession, we're going to go get the chance to go back down and compete and score and make this thing competitive. And before you know it, there's another six that would turn into 7 points on the board because somebody doesn't understand the rules of the game.
Yeah, no, and I think it's hard to argue that was on a coaching fault, whether it's a special teams coordinator, but I do believe Mike Tomlin will get that corrected this week. Like, they usually take advantage of special teams on other teams. That's something they usually coach well on. So, but another game I did want to touch on, I know you probably don't, but I do, is the Saints and the Niners, man. Like, Spencer Rattler, me and you talked about it in the offseason, and I think a lot of media talked about it. Like, we were like, man, this team is dead to rights. Now, they are 0-2, right? Mm-hmm. But Spencer Rattler was 207 yesterday, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He did get sacked 3 times as their line is older and being remade after a few players retired. But and Alvin Kamara, 99 yards on the ground, 21 carries, and then he had another 21 in the air. So like their offense seems to be doing well. The issue I saw there for them, the big turnover point in the game was Alvin Kamara losing a fumble, Spencer Rattler losing a fumble. Right, they had 2 fumbles lost, 1 fumble recovered, and they didn't create turnovers on defense. Right, and then finally Mac Jones getting to play. For Shanahan, who we thought he's gonna get drafted, but he went 279 yards, 26 for 39, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 3 sacks for only 12 yards. He only gave up 12 yards. They didn't get the running game going like they would want to, but they had the short game moving. Juwan Jennings looks healthy, right? He had an explosive play yesterday for a 2-yard touchdown. But were there any things that kind of stood out to you on that game besides the turnovers?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if we're talking about coaching, right, if I'm going to be critical of Mike Tomlin and maybe his conservative play calling and him maybe not maximizing the talent that's on that roster, I want to give credit to where credit is due to Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore is absolutely getting everything he can out of that roster.
Absolutely.
And they went toe-to-toe with a 49ers team. Say whatever you want to say about the 49ers not having their starting quarterback in Brock Purdy. Mac Jones has been a starting quarterback in the NFL before
within the last 2 years.
For a few years. Right. You know what I mean? He's carried a franchise and he's had some success and he's had some not so good success. And you partner him with a Kyle Shanahan who does really good scheming up stuff. If you can understand the nuances of his offense, it's a very quarterback friendly offense, even though it does require the quarterback to get through his reads and his progressions and be on time with this stuff. If that's your specialty, which we've seen Mac Jones at every different level, right? Like we've seen him at Alabama, we've seen him in the New England Patriots. Like when he has a coordinator that is helping him, make his job easy, he can make the throws. And that's what Kyle Shanahan is doing, is he's taking all the guesswork out for him. You surround him with any kind of amount of talent. And make no mistake, even though there's not like a lot of prolific receivers on the 49ers right now that are active, like they have some dudes that can get out there and make separation, and Mac Jones is going to make those throws. Now, I say all that to say the Saints had no business competing with the 49ers. Absolutely. With the talent that they have on that defense versus what's on there on that offense, I think this was an underwhelming show for the defense of the 49ers, especially with Robert Saleh back for his second time around. I fully thought that the 49ers would just go in there and absolutely bully the New Orleans Saints, and that is not what happened. So I do want to give a shout out to the New Orleans Saints, and I want to give a big shout out to Kellen Moore because he's absolutely maximizing the talent there that's on that roster.
And they have one of the least talented rosters, in my opinion, but he's maximized.
Yeah, somebody named if Spencer Rattler, Alvin Kamara,
Chris
Olave,
who hasn't looked good this year.
Somebody got to start naming me some more Saints players. I don't know who's on that roster. So, again, kudos to them. I'm mad that the 49ers won, but Spencer Rattler looks like he could be an NFL quarterback versus when we had seen him just last year. We're like, yeah, this guy shouldn't make a 53-man. So the growth is evident there. Hopefully he continues to progress, right, and he gets his opportunity, right, because I want well for all of these guys that, dream of being in the league one day and they highly touted individuals coming out. Like, I want him to realize his potential and stuff, and maybe Kellen Moore is a guy that unlocks that for him.
Absolutely.
I do want to keep it in the NFC West, though, and I'm not going where probably people think that I'm going. I do want to go to the Panthers-Cardinals game.
Yeah, okay.
Because that was a really, really messy game until the fourth quarter when, the Panthers found some kind of life. It's like the Cardinals just took their foot off the gas, or, however you want to say it, right? Either the Cardinals took their foot off the gas or the Panthers found a way. Bryce Young was running around there for his life, but he was making throws. He was sticking in there, and, you got to see some Ted McMillan play. Xavier Legette continues to be one of the more, underwhelming draft picks of the last few years. Like, he's just invisible out there.
1 reception for -2 yards. So
Yeah, he's again invisible, so invisible that he's negative. But that Panthers defense really gave everything that they could to the Cardinals, and they put them in position for Bryce Young to go down and do the go-ahead drive and win that game. Now, ultimately, they were unable to pull that off. He ends up taking the sack. The defense is just too much for a Panthers line that gets devastated. I think they ended up losing both their guard and their center yesterday. I think torn triceps and torn MCL for them, something like that. So that's not good news for the Panthers because they're not particularly deep along their offensive line. I mean, most teams aren't deep along their offensive line unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles. But like Bryce Young continues to look like, okay, he understands it, right? Dave Canales looks like a competent head coach. And again, that's a really, really talent devoid roster. And I feel like Dave Canales is maximizing what he can get out of that. Now, the question is with David Tepper, right, who's one of the more temperamental owners in the league, is he going to continue to ride this thing out and give it time and maybe go take one more swing in the offseason, right? Let Dave Canales get one more draft under his belt, one more free agency under his belt, see if he can get this thing turned around. But after those injuries yesterday to the interior of their offensive line, like I'm nervous about the Carolina Panthers' future going forward for the rest of this season. On the other side of that, though, the Cardinals, while they look good in spots, and Kyler was very much Kyler Murray, I didn't see the attack that I thought I was going to see. I thought we would continue to see more chemistry develop between Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. And that just wasn't the thing. Was it Trey McBride, right?
Mm-hmm.
He continued. He was the big focal point. And even James Conner, right, who I felt last year was running really, really violently behind his pads, just didn't seem to have that same level of aggression yesterday. Still a really good day for him, but it seems like he's halfway out the door while Trey Benson is on his way in the door. That pass rush looks really, really good for the Arizona Cardinals, but this doesn't look like a team to me that is going to be either around in January or going to make a long run in January. These are both two teams that I think could end up missing the playoffs, or the Cardinals making it and getting bounced early.
Yeah, no, the thing when you saw the offensive Cardinals have, Trey McBride is clearly the number one receiver at the tight end position. He's their number one receiver. Kyler's comfortable with them, which smaller quarterbacks normally rely on their tight ends, and that's something Bryce Young started to do, which is helped him out a ton as well. But the Marvin Harrison 2 receptions, 27 yards, like there's really never a game that should happen. I don't know what's happening with their rapport, right? Like, again, it just doesn't seem like on the field everything is there. I heard they were putting in some work in the offseason, and I think that should come to fruition. But the other portion of that is the Panthers' defense. They do have a defense. They got guys. They got Trevor Murray. They got J.C. Horn. I mean, they got some guys on their defense. Tommy Troubles makes plays. So I think it's a combination of that. Like they got a gritty W because really that game was a little bit messy. It was gritty. Bryce Young realistically outplayed Kyler Murray. He had an untimely fumble, but he did have 327 yards or something like that. Let me see. He had 328 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Like he had a relatively good game for the amount of times he had to drop back. But again, this is another team where I look at they had less than 50 yards rushing. It's going to be very difficult to get a lead, keep a lead, and run the clock out if you're not playing good defense or running the ball. And they did have an issue with that. The Cardinals, on the other hand, had an issue as far as running the ball as well. They had 82 yards rushing. The difference is they have a Kyler Murray who got 32 yards. He had a 30-yard run, right? So you always have the threat of a defense of Kyler taking off, of Lamar taking off, Jalen Hurts taking off, like Josh Allen taking off. There's quarterbacks like that. So even the threat of their running game with having a quarterback like that makes it a little bit easier for these other guys. And I do agree, like James Conner, his production has been, he's averaged around 3.5 yards a carry the last couple seasons. And really, I feel like they need to make him more of that, power back and let Trey Benson maybe step into that starting role and see if he can get some explosiveness on the ground going for him. Because, again, he only had 3 carries, but he averaged almost 5 yards a carry. on 3 carries. So I think if you give him more volume, that could be better. And then have James Conner kind of come in and help close out the games. But he's not really getting the production that you would want out of your starting running back. You can't have your starting running back average 3 yards a carry, 3.5 yards a carry, less than really 4 yards a carry. And he's to the point in his career where that's where he's starting to be. But he is a power back, so he has some value, obviously. So I would like to see them make that switch. Gritty win for the Cardinals. They start off the season 2-0. The Panthers start the season off 0-2. But the Panthers have been in their games, and I do love the fact that Bryce Young is becoming the player that they drafted, right? Like they made him the number 1 pick in that draft for a reason. Jaden Daniels obviously was number 2, and some people would be like, "Hey, is that ever going to?" Hey, regardless, he's looking good, and I think he'll continue to improve. And you brought up a good point. If their ownership will let them continue to progress, this team's going to be dangerous the more they're together.
Yeah, something that I know you got to be super, super happy about. The Chiefs, for the first time since 2014, start the season 0-2 in a tight one against the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They end up losing 20-17. Things that stood out to me from this game, right? Patrick Mahomes was doing his best interpretation of Jalen Hurts. And Tyquan Thornton might be a guy for Kansas City.
Absolutely.
Travis Kelce looked like he rewound the clock a little bit on this game, where he got a lot more production than we have grown accustomed to seeing over the last few years. And that's probably just due to the lack of available options that Mahomes had. But Mahomes was out there creating a lot of opportunities with his legs. And, as always, like the arm is going to be there. He missed a touchdown to Tyquan, but ended up making up for it on the same drive, hitting Tyquan on a deep bomb for a touchdown. Like Tyquan Thornton could really be something for that team. Neither of those defenses yesterday looked phenomenal. They didn't look like world beaters, and neither of the offenses looked great. Like we talked so much in the offseason about how good this Eagles front office is at acquiring talent and keeping that roster fresh, right? And all the talent that they're bringing back and the talent that they got in the draft and things of that nature. But I can't put my finger on it, man. Something feels very, very off with this Eagles team. Like they just don't feel the same. And again, it's hard to say when they're 2-0, but I've seen 2 games already. The defense doesn't feel as dominant. It doesn't feel as imposing, as inevitable as it used to be a season ago. And the offense outside of Jalen Hurts doesn't even seem to be that good. Like, don't get me wrong, Saquon is still very much Saquon.
Doing his thing, yeah.
He's doing his thing. But where I just felt like even 2 games into the season last year, like he was running like he had a point to prove. And we were getting, 100 yards. The line was moving people. A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, I don't know what's happening there. Like, I don't know what's happening with their air attack this year. Maybe Kellen Moore was more pivotal to their offense than we really are prepared to give him credit for. But I think if the Eagles continue to operate in this way, this is not a Super Bowl winning team. And that's not to say that they're not going to be there in January. I think this is absolutely a team that's going to be in January. And, as the season winds on, right, like they could find their rhythm. They'll probably, knowing Howie, right, he's probably going to make a few moves before the trade deadline that are going to just put them over the edge and get them rolling. But, yeah, man, 2 of perennial contenders, Super Bowl contenders, and neither one of them quite feel like the versions of the teams that we've grown accustomed to the last few seasons.
I agree with that on the Chiefs perspective. I just think a thing on a championship team is every game is not going to be a blowout. You're not going to throw up a bunch of points every game. So for them to be able to get these gritty W's, I mean, they still only held Kansas City to 17 points yesterday. They only scored 20, which was kind of part of the problem. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, like you have 2 of the better receivers in the league, like 2 top 15 receivers, right? There's no reason their passing attack shouldn't be that. Jalen Hurts is a very capable quarterback. But with that being said, what I have learned to not do at this point is doubt Nick Sirianni, because he gets his team inspired to play. They get out gritty W's. The whole team was happy about it. A.J. Brown wasn't mad about not catching passes like that. Devontae Smith's always been a very humble receiver as well. So I think as they're rounding into form, getting these gritty W's is going to be a good thing. And then for the Chiefs, man, they had that that tough game against the Chargers. They got this game next week. They got the Giants. That's a potential win for them. That's Sunday Night Football. But then after that, they have the Ravens, and then they have the Jaguars, right? And the Jaguars and the Lions, and then Commanders, Raiders, Bills, Colts. Like, they got a tough schedule. It's really, again, I think some people, when they heard me, they're like, "Oh, you're just being a homer. You got the Broncos potentially winning that division." And I didn't know how the Chargers would play losing Slayton, but saying that to say, brother, it's like I don't know. It's not looking good for them. They're going to have to figure something out, and they are absolutely missing their number one receiver. Like, their whole game plan has looked completely different since they haven't had Rice. So,
I think the last game that I want to talk about from Sunday, surprise, surprise, it's actually not going to be the Rams game. The game that I actually want to talk about is the Colts versus the Broncos, which was a really, really good game.
The Colts and the refs versus the Broncos.
It felt like some home cooking was happening at the end of that game. But right, I hate when the ending of a game kind of ruins what to me felt like an instant classic. Bo Nix looked much better than he did in week 1. But I think the most intriguing storyline is how good this Colts offense has looked with Daniel Jones under center. They have not punted the ball at all this season.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. I think a thing that I noticed right away yesterday, obviously Jonathan Taylor, still Jonathan Taylor, right? Our defense is missing Malcolm Roach, Dre Greenlaw. Those are two of the guys brought in to kind of help that running game, and we're missing those two. So I think that does hurt. But the Colts absolutely took advantage of that and had 167 yards on the ground, 165 of that coming from Jonathan Taylor. But the number one thing I noticed, man, is Tyler Warren is a fucking beast. Like, Tyler Warren is a guy. He moves around. He got 80 yards. He set up their offense. Their entire offense really ran through him. He was blocking well. He was opening holes for Jonathan Taylor and stuff as well, but he was always in the sight line of Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones not having turnovers, not taking big sacks. We only sacked him one time. There was a couple. There were some pressures he did have, but he's playing like the Giants thought he would play when they paid him all that money that he didn't do much with besides that one season. So him and Shane Steichen seem to have that figured out. But Tyler Warren, the biggest thing I noticed is Tyler Warren's the guy. DeForest Buckner is still DeForest Buckner. He was dominating really the middle of our offensive line. But Bo Nix did continue to make a leap, in a lot of the offseason rumblings we heard about Troy Franklin developing, which is one of the reasons they felt okay getting rid of some receivers. Troy Franklin had eight catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Marvin Mims had a touchdown. Cortland Sutton only had one catch, and that kind of let me know the game wasn't going to go the way we might have wanted it to, right? But it was a gritty thing. They missed that field goal. I mean, Soup, like, literally, brother, I didn't realize the Broncos lost. So I walked upstairs after that field goal, and I was like, baby, is over. Like, I was all hyped. Came back downstairs, and they said 29-20. Yes, so what the hell? So I looked at they said wrong. So I looked at the penalty. I'm like, man. And at the end of the day, I do like Sean Payton taking accountability. That's something you're not able to jump over that long snapper, and that happens every week. But the refs did call it. That turned out to be the difference in the game. 28-29. But this Colts team looks competitive, man. Daniel Jones looks like he could be a good stopgap quarterback for them. I'm hoping that AR learns behind him, right? Anthony Richardson learns behind him, and can take over this offense in a year or two. He can make a Bryce Young kind of resurgence, but right now Daniel Jones is absolutely making plays for them.
All right, man. Well, look, as promised, I wanted to end the week's wrap up of games, spinning it all the way back to last Thursday's game, Green Bay Packers versus the Washington D.C. Commanders. Bro, the Packers look for real this year. Like, that defense looks crazy. They were getting after Jaden Daniels all day. Jordan Love continues to look like a really competent quarterback, high level, but to me, they look like the class of the NFC North. Like, I'm watching that game, and I can't believe what I'm seeing, because Green Bay has not been, for a few years now, they've not been a team that's been traditionally known for their defense, and it really feels like this year the defense is going to be the calling card for Green Bay.
Yeah, their defense looks absolutely ferocious. Adding Micah Parsons to that defense absolutely rounded it out. They were giving Jaden Daniels fits the whole game to the point where Dan Quinn today said he's going to be day to day. There's a potential of him missing the next game this week, but they got after it, man. They absolutely got after them. The Commanders in that game, they unfortunately lost Austin Eckler for the season, right?
Yep.
Jaden Daniels was having some issues. He got sacked 4 times. So it kind of lets you know they got these injuries, but it's not because like the guys are soft. It was just that Packers defense was so physical. It made Jordan Love's day easy. Jordan Love with 292 for 2 touchdowns. He got sacked a few times, but they were able to run the ball. Josh Jacobs had 84 yards rushing. They had over 135 as a team. Tyler Kraft balled out, absolutely balled out. And the thing that has been – yeah, Tucker Kraft, I apologize. And the big thing that has been missing, man, this entire year is Matthew Golden had no catches. He only had 2 catches the first game, and he hasn't even gone off like the way that they're anticipating. They were saying that he's going to be the guy. He's going to be a big guy for them. He hasn't even got into form yet, and they're dominating. So if that's still something that they're waiting on to happen, right, they got a few receivers out with injuries as well, and they're still looking this dominant. I can't even imagine what they're going to look like around Thanksgiving if they start getting Matthew Golden involved, et cetera. But that defense, man, this is definitely a defense forward team. Edgerrin Cooper had 7 tackles for them, man. 7 solo tackles, 10 total. Quay Walker has been a tackling machine. And then they were able to get 4 sacks as well. So I think they're going to be the team to beat in the NFC North. I'm definitely looking forward to, in a few weeks when they get to play the Lions one more time, right? The Lions didn't look that good. They looked phenomenal next time, right? That'll be towards the end of the season they get to play again. Was that the Packers defense being that dominant? Was the offense just not hitting there for the Lions? Like, what was that? I think that game late season is going to tell us exactly what we need to know about this NFC North.
All right. Well, look here. We have a doubleheader on tonight for Monday Night Football. And this is the thing, like, you want to talk about first world problems. Like, normally I love more football. I hate a Monday night doubleheader, especially if they're happening at the same time, because I don't like watching like the side-by-side box. Like, I want to take one game and I want to focus on it, but whatever, right? First world problems. So real quickly, give me your predictions for the winners of let's go Chargers, Raiders. I know secretly, not even secretly, right? Like out loud, you just hope the stadium explodes and takes both of them. I'm kind of there with you as well, but how do you see the matchup tonight going?
If there's a way for them to both lose, that would be ideal. But I do think the Chargers looked really good last week, and if they're able to continue that physicality, I could see them pulling this game out by like a field goal. I think it's like a 3.5, 4-point spread. But that is the later game tonight, so Eastern time. I'm looking at it right now. It's 8 Mountain time, so it's going to not start till like 10 o'clock Eastern time. Okay. And then the Bucks and the Texans start 5 o'clock. Mountain time, so that's going to be a late game. I'll be up for it on my night owl anyway. But I do have the Chargers in that first game, and then the second game is going to be a little bit tight. I believe the Texans can pull that off an upset of the Bucks, but I would not be surprised if Emeka Egbuka went crazy. The Bucks end up pulling that game out. That one I think is like a pick 'em really in my mind. Like I think whoever has the ball last could win that game. And I need to see something from CJ Stroud. I need to see him go forward, make progress. He's been kind of stagnant since his rookie year. So let's hope to see some progression from him as well.
Yeah, I think tonight, unfortunately for my brother Marshall, I think it's going to be a dominant performance by the Chargers tonight over the Raiders. It's going to suck. Also, happy birthday, Pete Carroll. I think he's 74 today. So still officially the oldest coach in the NFL. But, he probably wants a win for his birthday. So he's making other plans. And like I said, Geno, to his credit, Geno looked good last week. Ashton Jeanty looked good last week. But I think the thing that's going to hold them up is they're missing a lot of pieces off of their defense tonight. Brock Bowers is still iffy, even though Pete said that he will play, but we don't know what he's going to look like or for how long he's going to play. And then what's his name? Powers Johnson is out tonight. Right. So, again, the Chargers lost. They're down Denzel Perryman, but outside of that, everything else is going to be the same. Justin Herbert is going to be there. We'll see if Quentin Johnston, if he succeeded with his Freaky Friday swap of his hands for CeeDee Lamb's hands. We'll see if that continues tonight. And then in the Houston Texans versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even though the Texans, I love their defense, especially because we had to go against it last week. So I know what those guys are capable of, and I know how stingy Derek Stingley is. I was really impressed with the route running that Emeka Egbuka was doing last year, not last year, but last week, and how quickly him and Baker have seemed to develop some chemistry. And that defense that the Buccaneers has is not one to be slouched, one to just pass up and look beyond anyway. I like the scrappiness of Baker. I've got the Bucs edging out the Texans by a field goal.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that game's going to be a field goal game either way. And if one of the teams ends up whooping the other team, that'll be a little bit of a surprise to me. But I do hope the Chargers and the Raiders both lose somehow. First game in NFL history where both teams lose. I don't think that's gonna happen, but I never go for the Raiders. I never go for the Chargers. It'd be more advantageous if the Raiders beat the Chargers, but I don't know with those injuries they have how they're gonna pull that game off.
Well, Bane could show up in the stadium and detonate it, a la Dark Knight style. That would be the best possible outcome for you. But anyway, it's only week 2. It's an exciting season. There's going to be plenty more to come. You guys stay locked here with us at In the Pocket Podcast, where we drop episodes every single Monday. We cover all 32 teams. Go ahead and hit that hit the thumbs up button. Go ahead and hit subscribe, and then toggle that bell so that way you get notifications whenever the new episodes drop. We appreciate every single one of you guys, and we'll see you guys next Monday.